It's completely self-contained. It doesn't rely on Apache. It doesn't rely on PHP. It's all running inside of Node. So if I run this, it's just sitting there running. Meaning I can open up localhost port 8080, and it'll just sit there doing nothing because it has no clue what's happening. But I could have this console log, client, yay. And if I rerun this, and I reload this, good. Oh yeah, there, in little text it says, client. So now we actually want to make it want to say something, right? So as the result, we're just going to end the result with the good old classic, hello, mom. Why would you say hello to the world? Goodness. And unlike PHP, you do have to restart the server every time because it takes that server and it actually compiles it through some crazy method into actual like machine code, like what you get out of C. But it's all written in JavaScript, which is infinitely easier to write. So now we reload, you can just see right there, hello mom. Right? So this is all well and good, but it doesn't do much, right? We can do anything we want. We can say this is some path with arguments, and it's going to do absolutely nothing more than say hello mom now and forever. Because instead of reading different files like PHP does, it's all contained inside this server. And all this server is going to do is take the results and say hello mom, and then say boom, we're done, goodbye. So if we want to, say, look at the request, we can take the request and say, request headers are interesting. And maybe we want to save those instead of saying hello mom. Right? Now in a normal place, you would probably do something with those headers, but now we're just going to echo them out. Object, object, of course, because I need to. Goodness gracious. I need to stringify them, not that, because all the headers are just a normal JavaScript object, right? So if I want to look at the headers, I have to restart my server. Then I get, these are the headers that we're sending, right? So now, if I wanted to, say, support some crazy old browsers, I could do some user agent sniffing, right? I've got my user agent. It says that I am running Chrome 33 in that crazy long string there. Or I can look at, I can also make it say, on a new line, request URL, I believe, is what I'm looking for. I can look at that.
Restart the server.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Always in such a rush. Right, so now I have this, right? I have, this is some path with arguments. I can do something with that, right? I could take this and determine, okay, so now I want to do this function instead. I want to find a function literally called this now, right? You can do that in JavaScript. I could say, right, I can create an object called handlers. We're going to handle connections. And I can define, as part of it, something called this, a string called this. And say it is a function that takes a request and result, and it just result and hi from this. Right? But how are we going to call that? We can just go in and take this request URL and split it on the slash, right? So request URL starts with a slash, so we want the second one. So we'll say we can call handlers and then dynamically access it with split URL 1, which is actually the second entry, because 0 indexed arrays. And just give it a request and result. And this should work, hopefully. Boom, hi from this, right? So if I wanted to do more, I could say something. And I could have that do anything I want, right? But the idea is to keep this simple. I can just say, and some other data. Right? So now if I restart my server, I got an exception there, that's always fun. So if I go to something, not going to load because I crashed it, so it was different. But now, if I go to something, I get some other data. So now I can dynamically choose, based upon the user input, I can dynamically choose how I want to handle that request. So instead of creating different files, I just create different functions. I can do that all in one file. I can load them in just like I loaded this HTTP library in. You know, or there are a bunch of pre-written ones. Right? There's this thing called connect.
Before we move on to connect, simple question over here.
Yes.
I think I'm missing something in the syntax. Up above, we declare, you said client in quotation marks, client with exclamation point.
Where is
Right
that?
there,
Console.
Okay, yeah.
What is that doing? What is the client exclamation point?
All that's doing is saying, I got a connection, right? Whenever a connection happens, that's something that isn't really explained well. Okay, so here in HTTP, we're creating a server, and you pass it as an argument. You give it a function that is going to handle incoming connections. Every time an incoming connection happens, this function will be called. It's always going to be passed the arguments request and result.
Okay, but what is the syntax client? Right there, console.log client. What is that?
That's just a string. Yeah, if you see here,
I didn't see that.
it's kind of hard to see. It's behind me, it's in small text. That's just a string saying that we got a connection from a client.
Okay.
Right, so I want to keep track of how many times I load the page, so I do that.
And just to clarify, the arrays, you don't have to say how large they're going to be. It's just dynamic,
No,
however.
Absolutely not. See, arrays are completely dynamic. Everything in JavaScript is an object, actually, even arrays, even functions, even Numbers aren't objects, are they? It's iffy zone. Anyways, yeah, JavaScript is interesting in that pretty much everything is an object, right? So, I forgot where I was going with that. So, you can see now that this is crashing when I give it input that it's not expecting, right? So if I restart this, and you can see that I have the handlers for this and for something. If I go to haha, boom, it dies. Because it's looking inside of handlers for haha, which doesn't exist, so it can't access it. So I need some sort of error handling, which this is not the best way to do it. Do not do it like this. I'm just doing this to be fast. Which is an argument you will find yourself using way more often than you would like to admit. So now I'm just gonna console log no page. And maybe I'll leave myself a little note to do this better. and then you can go to bed at night feeling good about yourself because you will do it.
Days and weeks later. Days and weeks later.
Right. Yeah, well, the great thing about this is that you can kind of hold yourself to it. There's this little tab down here called to do. Found one to-do item in one file. To do this better. You can keep track of what you're doing inside a PHP store.
Nice.
We can